Good afternoon, everyone. I am here to take all of you with me on my journey to Antarctica. May I have the clicker, please? Thank you. So let us begin. I received this email on the 19th of August, completely unexpectedly. And a friend of mine had recommended me to Mr. Robert Swan to join him on his Antarctica expedition. I called my friend and asked her, "Why did you do this? I don't think I'm in any shape to do this." She said, "Of course you are, and of course you will." So with those words of encouragement, I went through the selection process, and on the 31st of August, I was given my selection letter. They had mentioned in the welcome kit that I would have to be moderately fit, along with all the other requirements of gear, so on and so forth. So I started training. But within 2 short weeks, I encountered severe pain in my knees. On consulting my orthopedic doctor, he told me that I had some form of arthritis. He put me on a regimen of physiotherapy and supplements, but he also made me promise that if he doesn't give me a clean bill of health, I should drop the entire idea. I was a little disheartened, but nevertheless, I kept on training. By November, I was doing really well. But around Diwali, I was again back into the hospital with appendicitis. And again, I had to undergo surgery. So I am negotiating with the doctor. Can we avoid this? Can antibiotics treat it? But he said, no, surgery is the only way. But don't worry, you will be out of the hospital in 3 days. I was very encouraged. We went with the surgery. Once it was done, he tells me, now for next 6 weeks, you can't train at all. So now what to do? Now since I was benched, I decided to do my paperwork. While doing that, I realized that Argentina, our host country, is not accepting the Covaxin certificate. But with the help of few kind seniors in Delhi, finally it was sorted out. By this time, it was February. And then my husband contracted COVID. By this time, I was starting to get desperate, and self-doubt had started creeping in. But despite all of this, I was finally able to board my flight on the 14th of March. Here too, things did not go very smoothly. I was going to transit through Germany. On arriving there, there was a strike of the security personnel. So immigration and security took a really long time. But somehow I was able to catch my connecting flight to Buenos Aires and further going to Ushuaia. Now, till I saw this in front of me from my plane window, I had not realized what was happening. There was one hurdle after the other, and I was just functioning on autopilot. But then finally, when I saw this, the enormity of everything dawned on me. And this was the scene that greeted us when we entered our hotel. Remember, we are still not out of the shadow of Omicron, so many doctors and nurses in PPE kits were waiting with COVID tests to see and judge our fate. On that day, participants from 36 countries arrived, and out of 175 people tested, 4 were already positive. With that dire news, whether expedition happens or not, whether we participate or not, with that anxiety, we all went to bed. But the next morning, the view out of my window filled me up with new energy, and I was ready to have our first interaction with Mr. Robert Swan. He is a polar explorer who has been multiple times to both the North and the South Pole, and he is also a climate activist, and he is trying to fight to make sure that the Earth remains safe and the poles remain safe from the effects of climate change. He says something very interesting. He says the world or the planet is not something that we have inherited from our ancestors. It is something that we have borrowed from our future generations, and we need to keep it safe for them. After the briefing, we went to the Cerro El Arquén National Reserve, which is like a national park of our country, and we trekked there, and we were enjoying the beautiful sunny weather. But by the time we got back to our hotel, we were given a glimpse of the true unpredictable Patagonian weather, and we knew what the expedition is going to be like. After this, the next day, we went to Marshall Glacier. This was an acclimatizing trek. We also did our gear check, learned about grips, and it was a slightly more technical trek preparing us for how it was going to be while walking on the glaciers of Antarctica. So on my way back, I was just really happy. As you could see, my balance on flat ground itself is not very good. So not falling or breaking anything was a huge achievement for me. Finally, after another set of gear checks, another set of COVID tests, we were ready to board our ship, the Ocean Victory. We were going to take a journey of 1,200 kilometers across the dreaded Drake's Passage and reach the northern tip of the Antarctic Peninsula. We were going to restrict ourselves to the western half of the continent, and that is also the part which is most affected by global warming and climate change. We were told to take anti-hematic or seasickness medication from the time we boarded the ship. But for some reason, I decided not to take it. I was very overconfident. I've been to the Andamans. My foray in the Arabian Sea has been fine, so this should be nothing. I was wrong. For next 38 hours, this is what the sea looked like, and I had to survive on a single piece of dry toast because I couldn't eat anything else. The morning also was no better because I couldn't get any sleep. When I would sleep, as soon as the ship would go up and come down on the waves, I would feel as if I have fallen off of the bed, and I would wake up with a start. And then the entire process would repeat itself. Now, despite our ship being really, really well equipped, it couldn't put me out of my misery. Now, why this happens is because Antarctica is surrounded by the circumpolar Antarctic cold current, which keeps the continent cold, and no matter from which continent you try to approach it, you are going to have to cross it. So after 42 excruciating hours, we finally had the first glimpse of the Antarctic landmass. The views of the icebergs floating around us were absolutely stunning, and we were thrilled and waiting to get out onto the mainland. This is us in the mudroom getting ready, putting on layers after layers of clothing, doubling up, double checking to go out into sub-zero temperatures. These are zodiacs or motorized rafts that were supposed to take us on our forays. And this was the sight that greeted us as soon as we were outside. We were mesmerized. We were completely speechless. But before we could go and touch the land, we were hit by another blizzard. And we had to turn around, but not before this fantastic welcome by a humpback whale. Now, when I reached back to the mudroom, I did not realize that the buff, the cotton covering that I was wearing on my face, had stuck to my nose. So without waiting for it to thaw, I pulled it down. Along with it also came a little bit of my skin. If you people think that a sunburn is painful, wait till you experience a cold burn. As we moved further inside the continent, it got more and more pretty. The views got more and more amazing. Everything looked very pure. It looked very untouched. And then came the wildlife. We saw seals, including the rare leopard seal. We saw penguins, we saw whales, we saw dolphins, we saw Antarctic birds. It was a fantastic experience. The most frequently seen were these Gentoo penguins, which were there in large colonies. They were very cute to look at, but they were very, very stinky. And we are all thrilled, and we are trying to get onto the land and finally arrive in Antarctica. But we had to cross these icy waters first on foot because the rafts couldn't go there. And that we did. And finally, we had set foot and officially arrived on Antarctica. Next, we sailed through the Lemaire Channel, which is also called the Kodak Gap. They call it the Kodak Gap because of the rock faces that you see here. They make some of the most stunning images. When we reached Nikko Harbor, that day the katabatic winds were especially strong. One moment we were all posing for pictures, the next moment we were trying to hold on to our gear. But those winds and that sound made us realize that we are finally in a place which is the last wilderness, the last continent. We also visited the Brown Scientific Station, which is the science station of Argentina, and that day I climbed all the way up to this point. And when I was here is when I realized how far I had come. From being filled with self-doubt, I was standing literally on the top of the world, at the bottom of the world. And here is where I felt really grateful. Not to my mom, not to God, but to my doctors. All of you all. This was followed by our visit to the Michelson Harbour. This place is notorious for the remnant of whale bones because of the whaling industry which used to be involved for killing whales. Whale oil used to be the main source of energy, and because of that a large number of whales were killed for more than 200 years. This is the reason why the population of blue whales has almost been decimated. Interestingly, Michelson Harbour is named after Caroline Michelson, who is the first woman to land in Antarctica. Just the enormity of these kind of glaciers made us all very philosophical. It forced us to think that as human beings, as a single species, what is the effect we are having on this intricate web of life? I was also fortunate enough to have an opportunity to speak on the ship about the work that we do and the wildlife conservation success of our country. Basically, we are a mystery to the world, because despite being the most populous nation in the world, we are not only ensuring the future of our wildlife, but we are making sure that they thrive. All our flagship species are doing really, really well. And because of this, we have attracted a lot of global attention. And I think the reason is basically this. One, traditionally, from Vedic times, we have had a culture of conservation in our country. For example, we respect the right to live of each and every living creature. Second, the series of historic events, including the invasions. For example, the game reserves that were set aside earlier for hunting have today become our protected areas. And third, most importantly, post-independence, there were a series of laws that were passed, including constitutional amendments, which made it compulsory for the citizens of this country to protect nature. And most importantly, the same people that the world looks at in awe, the same mass of population which the world thinks is a challenge, is actually our biggest strength. When people come together, they are an unstoppable force. Now, it was time for us to turn our ship around and start going back. We stopped on something called the Deception Island. It is a caldera of an exploded volcano. And on our arrival, we were greeted by these seals. And they were not very happy to see us. These fur seals kept on chasing us around. And this is another example of the whaling history that we see in the continent. These large-size vats that you see are kind of like pressure cookers of modern times. Whale bodies used to be chopped up and put in these and boiled to get the visceral fat out for whale oil extraction. We also went to the mouth of the extinct volcano, and the views that day made me, again, very philosophical. It made me question not only my existence, but as a species, what are we doing? And as we said goodbye to the last sunset in the Beagle Channel, my mind started racing. This is the news just 2 weeks ago. A large ice shelf has broken off of the western half of the continent. The krill, which is the center of the food web of all these wonderful animals that we had seen, is being overfished for the extraction of fish oil, and that is affecting the population of all of these dependent animals. Rapid warming effects because of global warming is decimating their populations and creating havoc on the biodiversity in this continent. And at the same time, the threat of the icebergs melting and sea level rising has not gone away. It is right on the horizon. Despite all of this, there are a lot of nations which are looking to own a piece of the continent. Right now, no nation owns Antarctica. This is because of the Antarctic Treaty and on top of it the Madrid Protocol, which made sure that Antarctica remains a place for scientific exploration and peaceful coexistence. But now, in 2041, the negotiations reopen because the treaty expires in 2048. And that is why Robert Swan has named his foundation 2041, because that is going to be a landmark year in deciding whether Antarctica remains a place of science and peace. Not only is it the coldest place on earth, not only it is the driest place on earth, not only does it hold 90% of Earth's ice, but it is also a convergence zone for biodiversity. It also regulates the cold currents. It is a circulation system, and all of it will be disturbed if we lose this continent. Now you must be wondering, what if all the ice was to melt? For example, it melts. So according to one study, if all the ice on Antarctica plus all the glaciers, including the Himalayan ones, were to melt, sea level would rise by roughly 70 meters. You would think we are a tropical country, we are an agrarian country, we have a lot on our minds, we have our own challenges and aspirations. Should we be worried about this? But if you look at the artist's depiction here, I would be worried. I think we all should be worried. Now, for climate change, all of us know that there are certain general solutions that need to be followed. Whether it is moving to a more sustainable lifestyle, whether it is to curb the use of plastic, or to stop fast fashion, or to reduce our emission in our industries, just somehow reduce our carbon footprint. But what in our minds we think is, this is something that the government is supposed to do, or the people in power are supposed to decide for us. I disagree. I think there is a lot that we can do. People like you and me, if we come together, we can actually make positive change. The list here, please take a look at it. This is something that I have thrown together just from the top of my mind. Give yourself 1 point for each of these things that you are already practicing. I'm sure you can make your own list, which is even more exhaustive. Keep making sure that you keep adding to your points. And behave the same way even when nobody is watching. Be the same everywhere. Be part of generation restoration. With that, there are a few gratitudes that I want to give out. First, it is to my service, because without that, I don't think I would have made it to this expedition at all. I'm very, very proud of it. And I call us the last line, the last green line, protecting the vast natural resources of this country. Second is, of course, my friend Charulata, who's an IAS colleague and who pushed me and recommended me for the expedition and also came with me on the expedition. A woman upholding another woman, shout out to her. And last but not the least, my family, especially my husband, who stood by me like a rock through the toughest times and made it possible for me to be here. Thank you, everyone.